president doesn't act today, House Democrats will proceed with impeachment. The single article of impeachment they have introduced says, quote, Donald John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States. He also willfully made statements that in context encouraged and foreseeably resulted in lawless action at the Capitol. We could be seeing a vote on that here in the coming days.
Bring it right to the floor, and it will be considered by the full House, and I expect that he will be impeached. He will be the first president in history to be impeached twice. We need to make it clear that there is a consequence to what happened on Wednesday. For those who say we should look the other way or we should move on, to do that basically says that what they did was okay.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and welcome back to another video. I hope you're all doing great. Today we're diving into another major Democratic drama that's making headlines and sparking intense debate.
Concerns about impeachment are increasingly shaping the political calculations inside Donald Trump's inner circle, particularly as attention turns toward the 2026 midterm elections. According to multiple reports, Trump has privately warned Republican lawmakers that losing control of the House of Representatives could lead to another impeachment effort. In closed-door meetings with House Republicans, he has reportedly framed the midterms as a decisive moment for his presidency, suggesting that a Democratic House majority would almost certainly pursue impeachment proceedings. These remarks indicate that impeachment is not viewed within Trump's circle as a distant or theoretical risk, but as a realistic outcome tied directly to electoral results. Major news organizations have reported that Trump and his advisors see the 2026 midterms as critical to maintaining political stability during the remainder of his term. Coverage has emphasized that the former president has expressed concern about a third impeachment if Republicans fail to hold the House. Advisors close to the White House have described retaining control of Congress as a matter of political self-preservation, a phrase that reflects the seriousness with which the administration views the situation. The concern is not rooted in an imminent impeachment vote, but in the structural reality that the House has sole authority to initiate impeachment proceedings. The political math underlying these concerns is straightforward. The House of Representatives consists of 435 members, and a majority of 218 seats is required to control the chamber. Republicans currently hold a narrow majority, with only a small number of seats separating the parties. Democrats would need to flip approximately 5 to 10 competitive districts to take control, a margin that is considered achievable in a typical midterm environment, particularly when the president's party is facing historical trends that often favor the opposition. These concerns are amplified by the fact that impeachment resolutions have already been introduced and are formally on file. Multiple resolutions filed during 2025 outline allegations related to presidential conduct, including abuse of power, obstruction of oversight, and conflicts of interest. While these resolutions did not advance under a Republican-controlled House, their existence means that procedural groundwork has already been laid. Should Democrats gain a majority, they would not need to start from scratch, but could move quickly toward hearings and votes. A key moment reinforcing these concerns occurred in December 2025, when a House member used procedural rules to force a vote on an impeachment-related resolution. Although the resolution failed, a significant number of House Democrats voted in favor, even in the absence of leadership support. This vote demonstrated that a substantial portion of the Democratic caucus is prepared to support impeachment if political conditions allow. While the vote had no immediate legal consequences, it provided a public indication of how impeachment support might translate into action under a different House composition. From the perspective of Trump's advisors, the risk is not limited to the Democratic base. They are particularly focused on swing voters in competitive districts, including suburban and independent voters, who may not strongly align with either party. These voters often determine close House races and may be motivated by a desire for congressional oversight or institutional checks on presidential power, rather than by partisan loyalty. Even modest shifts among these voters could be sufficient to change control of the House. Republican strategists are reportedly attempting to focus the 2026 campaign on issues they believe resonate broadly with voters, such as economic conditions, cost of living, public safety, and border policy. The goal is to emphasize topics that allow Republican candidates to localize their campaigns and avoid being defined by controversies surrounding the president. At the same time, advisors face the challenge of managing a political environment in which presidential actions and statements can quickly dominate media coverage and shape voter perceptions. Some figures within the broader conservative movement have publicly warned about the potential electoral consequences of unresolved controversies. Concerns have been raised that mishandling sensitive issues or allowing internal divisions to deepen could depress turnout among core supporters or energize opposition voters. In closely contested districts, even small changes in turnout can have significant consequences. The fear is that dissatisfaction among any segment of the Republican coalition could translate into losses large enough to shift the balance of power in the House. Foreign policy decisions, domestic enforcement actions, and disputes with other branches of government have also been cited by analysts as factors that could influence voter behavior. While such actions may appeal strongly to some supporters, they can create unease among moderates who prioritize stability and predictability. These dynamics are especially important in districts where elections are decided by narrow margins and where voters are sensitive to perceptions of political chaos or institutional strain. Within Democratic circles, there is growing pressure from activists and voters to pursue accountability measures should the party regain the House. While party leadership has generally emphasized legislative priorities and electoral messaging focused on everyday concerns, the demand for oversight and investigation remains strong. Many Democratic lawmakers are aware that their base expects action if the opportunity arises, particularly given the existence of previously introduced impeachment resolutions and the precedent set by earlier impeachment efforts. If Democrats were to regain control of the House by a narrow margin, impeachment proceedings would likely move forward, even if removal from office remained unlikely. Conviction in the Senate requires a 2/3 majority, a threshold that would be difficult to reach without significant bipartisan support. However, impeachment itself would have substantial political and historical implications, shaping public discourse, media coverage, and the president's legacy during the final years of the term. Several potential scenarios are being discussed privately among political strategists. In one scenario, Republicans retain control of the House, preventing impeachment proceedings and allowing the administration to govern without that particular threat. In another, Democrats win a narrow majority, leading to impeachment votes that pass largely along party lines but end in acquittal in the Senate. A third scenario involves a larger Democratic victory that intensifies political pressure during Senate proceedings, even if removal remains unlikely. The most extreme scenario, involving removal from office, is generally viewed as improbable absent extraordinary developments. Regardless of which scenario unfolds, the anticipation of impeachment is already influencing political behavior. Campaign strategies, policy decisions, and messaging choices are being evaluated through the lens of their potential impact on the 2026 elections. For Trump and his advisors, the midterms are not simply a routine electoral contest, but a referendum with direct implications for presidential authority and legacy. This dynamic underscores how closely electoral outcomes and constitutional mechanisms are intertwined. The impeachment process is inherently political, rooted in institutional rules that give the House significant power when control shifts. The narrow margins in the current House magnify the importance of individual races and increase the stakes of voter turnout and candidate performance in competitive districts. As the 2026 elections approach, both parties are likely to intensify their efforts. Republicans will aim to defend vulnerable seats and maintain unity, while Democrats will seek to capitalize on historical trends and voter dissatisfaction. The outcome will determine not only legislative priorities, but also whether impeachment becomes a defining feature of the final years of Trump's presidency. What makes this moment particularly significant is that the possibility of impeachment is no longer abstract. It is openly discussed by political leaders, reflected in campaign planning, and grounded in existing congressional actions. The acknowledgement by Trump himself that impeachment could follow a House loss has reinforced the perception that the stakes are unusually high. In this environment, even routine political developments are viewed through a heightened lens. Every controversy, policy decision, and public statement is assessed for its potential to influence swing voters and alter the balance of power. The result is a political climate characterized by caution, urgency, and strategic calculation on both sides. Ultimately, the next year will be shaped by this underlying tension. The 2026 midterms will serve as a turning point, determining whether impeachment remains a dormant possibility or becomes an active process. For Trump and those around him, the elections represent a critical test, one that could define the remainder of his term and his place in political history. The anxiety surrounding that possibility reflects not speculation, but a realistic assessment of how narrow margins, established procedures, and voter behavior could converge to produce a consequential outcome.